again, across this administration, everything inevitably is about the notion that inequality and inequity are exactly the same thing. And this is and your kids are being indoctrinated with this. So UNC Chapel Hill is now giving out mandatory woke training. According to Hot Air, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill recently held a mandatory training session for all Greek organizations on campus. Carolina Review, the campus conservative newspaper, got leaked audio from the training and also spoke to people who attended. Apparently, the person who was speaking here, whose name is Parl, started a presentation with an indigenous land recognition, after which hundreds of Greek attendees were advised they should make a habit of repeating the political catechism in their daily lives and taught how to do so. After establishing her lecture was on stolen land, Parl asked students their feelings about the system. Were they warm toward it, apathetic, or ready to dismantle it? At this point, Parl started talking about the role of identity and the social constructs which define them, a subject which introduced the presentation and remained a focal point throughout. She emphasized that identity is a primary factor in life experience, explaining that identity guides the way you navigate the world, and students were instructed to write their intersectional identities, like sex and race and sexual orientation and body size, on a piece of paper. And here's what it sounded like.
How many of you go to the grocery store and you need somebody to help you with the top shelf? Okay, so you got a good number of you. That is a system of oppression. It means that every grocery store, literally almost across the nation, was built for the average height person. All of you in this room experience privilege, and all of you in this room experience oppression in some way, big or small, right? Shouldn't feel guilty for your privilege. And how are you going to use it for good?
Okay, I'm sorry. This is insanity, but this goes back to the idea that any disparity is some form of, she literally says in this presentation, okay, this is not, now, because I'm discussing a woke training session at UNC Chapel Hill, this is what Barack Obama would call a culture war that is fake outrage. Okay, except that it goes to the heart of left-wing ideology right now. This lady is speaking to it. She literally says that if you have to reach for the top shelf at a grocery store because you can't reach it, you have to ask somebody else to help, you have suffered oppression. Right? Every single person in the room, she says, has benefited from oppression and suffered from oppression because the world was built for the average. Okay, so I just have a question. Who else would it be built for? What is her proposed solution? Should we have, presumably, the height of the shelves, because it's built for the average person, should it be built for the lowest common denominator? Presumably, that means that all the shelves at the grocery store should only be about 3'5" high, and you'd have to lease twice the space at the grocery store in order to fit everything. You'd have to have a much, much bigger store in order to be able to even lay out the goods. So that nobody has to take the horrifying step of asking a person who works at the store or a person walking down the aisle to reach something for them. By the way, I'll just note here that actually it creates a sort of communal comedy, the fact that people have to ask each other for help sometimes. That's not the end of the world. I was at Target the other day, and there was a lady there, and she'd lost her glasses, and she couldn't read the label on the bottom of a lamp that she wanted to buy. So she asked me for help, and I read it for her, and we kind of smiled at each other. We moved on. That wasn't a bad thing, because she wasn't oppressed. But the idea here, again, is that all structures of oppression are bad, and how are you going to dismantle them? Okay, that's not a mild cultural issue. And it has ramifications for everything across all areas of American life. And this is how you end up with videos from BuzzFeed about how you have 6 separate genders. And if society doesn't take into account 6 separate genders, that's because society is oppressive. When you get to the point where everybody's subjective identity is supposed to be accepted, celebrated, and built for by the society, then you can't have a society at all, because literally this stuff is subjective. It changes on a moment's notice. You have no objective way of verifying any of that. You can't construct a society. The point is the chaos. The point is the confusion. It is the same as the gobbledygook that is being spewed by this administration in justification of radical economic policy. It is all part of the same deal, which is that there will be no objective reality to which we all answer. That will just disappear into the ether. And any objective reality is a form of oppression. It is a form of oppression if somebody doesn't accept that you call yourself a unicorn. It is a form of oppression if you have to reach for the top shelf. And it is a form of oppression if there's one group of people in the United States that is poorer than another group of people in the United States, and you don't even have to look at whether there is a disparity between how people in one group act in the aggregate, not individually, in the aggregate. You don't have to look at the historic circumstances, and you don't have to look at whether the corrective to that might be more of a problem than the actual problem itself. And so here's how, in terms of gender, it manifests as just complete gobbledygook, sheer insanity. Here we go from this insane BuzzFeed video.
What is your gender?
I identify female.
I am male.
For me, there's a little bit of a difference between gender and gender expression. I would say I can't say the word feminine. My gender is feminine.
I was born anatomically, scientifically. Doctors were like, that's a girl. But as I grew up, I was like, that doesn't really work for me. I feel like I'm a more masculine person.
Like a cis male is what, like, I think I would classify as that as well, but I'm just like, I'm so uneducated on that.
Yeah.
I guess I never questioned it either, to be honest with you, so.
It's a matter of education, right? It's a matter of indoctrination. I'm just uneducated. None of these people know what they're talking about because it's complete nonsense. But the idea is that if all of reality is not reconstructed to fit their particular identities, then society itself is oppressive. There is no more, you cannot have a society this way. What you can have is sheer tyranny. You can have people who are empowered to fix every problem in American life and protect you from the vicissitudes of an actual real world that is going to bite back against you. See, this is the stupidity of all this. We can play this navel-gazing game where we pretend that all of these systems of reality no longer apply because we become so wealthy and so fat. Maybe we can do that. But eventually reality will win because reality is still out there. Reality is still reality. If we decide that just as a society, we're going to embrace stupidity, societies that don't embrace stupidity are going to benefit and flourish in the reality that exists. And those ones will overtake us. It is that simple. People who deny reality lose. Societies that deny reality lose. I root for reality because I think that reality always wins anyway. It's like rooting for the Yankees. Eventually, they're always going to win. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with all our future content.